Hey guys, it's Emma Vigeland with TYT Politics. I just wanted to give you guys an update. I know a lot of people are asking where Jordan is. Jordan's in Chicago right now at the NCSL Legislative Summit. So there's a reason why he hasn't been doing any of these videos on the recent DNC leaks, but I'm sure he's going to want to be talking about them once he gets back. I'm here in New Jersey at my house, just doing his work, covering his usual beat of uncovering corruption, so I hope that I'm doing an okay job for you guys. So yeah, that's why he hasn't been talking about these specific leaks and stories, but I wanted to give my thoughts and touch on and give an overview of the latest New York Times piece that's entitled "Hack of Democrats' Account Was Wider Than Believed," officials say. So I want to go through the information that they provide and then give my own take on what is going on with these DNC leaks that, Julian Assange has said that the latest bombshell is pending. He's going to drop that at some point. That is the big elephant in the room in terms of the Hillary Clinton campaign. So first, let's just go over this New York Times article, which basically says that, or I'll read it directly from it. So, a Russian cyber attack that targeted Democratic politicians was bigger than it first appeared and breached the private email accounts of more than 100 party officials and groups, officials with knowledge of the case said Wednesday. The widening scope of the attack has prompted the FBI to broaden its investigation, and agents have begun notifying a long list of Democratic officials that the Russians may have breached their personal accounts. So, really pushing this Russian thing. We'll see how I feel about that at the end of this video. The main targets appear to have been the personal email accounts of Hillary Clinton's campaign officials and party operatives, along with a number of party organizations. Officials have acknowledged that the Russian hackers, again, gained access to the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, which is the fundraising arm for the House Democrats, and to the Democratic National Committee, including a DNC voter analytics program used by Mrs. Clinton's presidential campaign. But the hack now appears to have extended well beyond those groups, and organizations like the Democratic Governors Association may also have been affected, according to the Democrats involved in the investigation. So yes, these leaks are broadening. The scope of them is broadening. Not exactly sure how far it's going to reach, but it seems like this is targeting almost all Democratic affiliated organizations. So not just the DNC, but the Democratic Governors Association and the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee is what the New York Times is reporting. American intelligence agencies have said that they have high confidence that the attack was the work of Russian intelligence agencies. It has injected a heavy dose of international intrigue into an already chaotic presidential campaign, as Democrats have alleged that the Russians are trying to help tilt the election towards the Republican nominee, Donald Trump. Mr. Trump stunned Democrats and Republicans when he said last month that he hoped Russian intelligence services had successfully hacked Mrs. Clinton's email and encouraged them to publish whatever they may have stolen, although he said later that he was being sarcastic. Classic, talk out of one side of his mouth, say something else, Donald Trump. But the thing that stuck out most to me in that particular section of this article, again, I'm skipping around a little bit, you guys should check it out, New York Times, that the Democrats have alleged that the Russians are trying to help tilt the election towards the Republican nominee, Donald Trump. I've said since the initial leaks happened that the narrative that the Democrats were pushing, saying that the Russians were doing this to harm Hillary Clinton and help Donald Trump, implying that Trump would be a more favorable president towards the Russians, and that Hillary would be so formidable that the Russians would have to go after her. I found that to be a very convenient narrative. It doesn't mean it's not true. It could be true, but it gave me a lot of pause, especially because in this election cycle, the New York Times have been known to take some of the Clinton talking points and basically regurgitate them. Again, I want to continue reading and give you my analysis at the end, but that was what gave me pause initially. Much of the briefings to the committee staff focused on the fact that American intelligence agencies have virtually no doubt that the Russian government was behind the theft. No doubt. That's, when you're that confident, it's always a good thing. Virtually no doubt that the Russian government was behind the theft, according to one staff member who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss elements of the conditional briefing. Anonymity. No one really has come out strongly saying that it was the Russians. Again, I'll take them at their word for right now, but don't be shocked when we find out that it may not be the Russian government, if we do find that out. Russian motives are still an open question, said a federal law enforcement official, who also spoke on the condition of anonymity. The FBI says it has no direct evidence that Mrs. Clinton's private email server was hacked by the Russians or anyone else. But in June, the FBI Director James Comey said that the intruders have tried, and that any successful intruders were probably far too skilled to leave evidence of their intrusion behind. Law enforcement officials said he had the Russians in mind. So what is it? Are they so skilled that they don't leave any trace of their work behind? Or was it the Russians? Why do you have the Russians in mind? A lot of people high up in the government would say to me, you can't know that. We have to keep that secret. There's a reason why he has the Russians in mind. But I really wish the New York Times would maybe put some caveat in there, like, why do they have the Russians in mind? If these hackers are so skilled, then why is the Russian government being implicated in this at all? Do we know that it's the Russians? Again, my bullshit meter goes up with this. I'm not saying that I'm right. I don't really have any idea, but I'm not going to take these officials at their word, especially because the New York Times has, as I said, been proven to have a ton of sources within the Clinton campaign and Clinton's people who they've pushed the Bernie chair throwing narrative, a bunch of other stuff in this election cycle. They've come out publicly, their editorial board. During the primary, they endorsed Hillary Clinton, so the New York Times is a great source, but in this particular instance, my bullshit meter goes up. So the article concludes with this. Well, here I'll read one more part. So far, it does not appear that the Russian hackers have sought or gained access to any computer systems used by Mr. Trump, who is known to avoid email, officials said. He's not known to avoid tweeting, so not really, I don't know what he would be hiding. He wears pretty much all of his horribleness on his sleeve, so there's that. Here's how the article concludes. WikiLeaks, the group that put out the DNC emails publicly last month, interjected itself into the hacking case again this week when it offered a $20,000 reward for information on the shooting death last month of a former DNC staff member, Seth Rich, outside his Washington home. His killing fueled speculation on the internet that he was somehow tied to the hacked emails, but the police have not given any credence to that speculation. The WikiLeaks founder, Julian Assange, has made it clear that he would like to hurt Mrs. Clinton's bid for the White House. Weird choice of words there. Or just, revealing information that the public should know. There's that. Opposing her candidacy on policy and personal grounds. He has hinted that he has more material about the presidential campaign that he could release. So, one, I think the Seth Rich story, I know some of you guys have asked us to comment on that. It's a little too tinfoil hat for me. I don't really think the Clintons are murderers. It's not, that my bullshit meter goes up for that too. I'm sorry if you guys disagree with me, but just really, I don't think that story has any credence or any legitimacy. But I also just hate the framing of this article, saying that Julian Assange just made it clear he wants to hurt Mrs. Clinton's bid for the White House. She kind of hurt herself by doing these nefarious actions and playing with dirty tricks, or using dirty tricks in this campaign not only against Bernie Sanders, but against a variety of, within her own campaign. They've just been, the Clinton Foundation stuff, where they funneled money from state parties. I mean, she's always consistently bending the rules, and it's not really the fault of the person who's revealing the information. He's just the messenger. The onus is on her to not break the rules. And basically, or my final thoughts on this, I'm using old-fashioned paper here. Very, very 19th century of me. No, it's not. Just like 20 years ago. If she was less arrogant, I would say that she should get out in front of this. She should basically have some sort of plan besides the Putin hates me narrative to get in front of this, because the smoking gun is coming. But her campaign has proven time and time again that they are infinite in their hubris and think that there's no way that they can't win. So if I were her, I would have some plan in action, because the smoking gun, quote unquote, is coming. Probably closer to the election than to right now. But again, my main takeaway from this article is, yes, more stuff is coming. The Democrats on a whole are going to be revealed in all of their corruptive glory as it is soon enough as these emails continue to be released. But I'm a little frustrated with the New York Times taking this Russian hacking narrative on its face. No State Department official or administrative official has come out publicly saying that it is the Russians. It just seems like when you have the government that has all this ties to the Clintons, the anonymous tippers saying it's the Russians shouldn't make a major news organization like the New York Times repeat that narrative verbatim for their readership, because we don't know. We don't know who it is. If they're not leaving their fingerprints, why do we assume it's the Russians? We can't assume that. And my other reaction is just that it's a sad indictment of the mainstream media that we have to find out real information from hackers. We really aren't getting much from them. And the reason they have such contempt for people like Edward Snowden and Julian Assange and people like that are because they're doing their jobs. They're doing the journalist jobs. Journalists are supposed to push and push to get the information out there to the public, not just have sources like the New York Times do in the Clinton campaign. Again, I like the New York Times, and they want to break stories, so they just regurgitate these talking points without really looking critically into them. I'm not saying the Russian hacking narrative isn't going to be the reality of the situation, but it's very convenient, and there's no real concrete statements by any State Department official for them to back this up. Unless there's some behind the scenes going on at the New York Times that I don't know about. So that's really my reaction to this particular story. I'm trying to find your guys' comments, but they are not coming up because I am bad with this particular app. I don't know how to figure it out. But I really hope that you guys have a great rest of your day, or Thursday, I was about to say Wednesday. But yeah, so that's my main reaction. More stories on the DNC hacks as they're unfolding. The mainstream media isn't going to be covering them that much. They're in Trump mania, but we will be, of course, covering them here on TYT Politics. So have a great day again, guys, and talk soon.